Introducing Oakley Meta Vanguard, the new performance AI glasses designed for athletes. With hands-free capture on an action-ready ultra-wide camera, powerful open-ear speakers, and built-in Meta AI that syncs with your Garmin devices for real-time insights while you train. Take your performance to the next level with Oakley Meta Vanguard. Athletic intelligence is here. Learn more on meta.com.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the Dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to How Are the Podcast. And you join us as we look forward to our trip to Stamford Bridge this weekend, which is a nice traditional 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday afternoon, which is nice. And with the lads riding high in the Premier League, we have a huge test ahead, of course. But we travel to the capital on the same number of points as Chelsea. So it's all nicely set up for the game ahead. So luckily, we have a special guest to talk through that and all things Chelsea. We have someone who covers the Blues for The Athletic. We are very pleased to welcome Simon Johnson. Hello, Simon.
Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, well, as we were talking about beforehand, everyone seems to have the lurgy who you're talking to today. And I'm on the tail end, but I'm getting there, thanks. But I think you're in the thick of the action at Stamford Bridge in midweek, weren't you, for the Ajax game?
Yeah, we're talking... just it feels like only a few hours after I filed, actually. hence my bags. Obviously, those of you listening can't see my bags. Lucky for you, but Chris can see that my bags are quite nice dark colour. But yes, I was at Chelsea Ajax at the time of recording last night, Wednesday night, and Chelsea had bit of fun in the London rain in Storm Ben, isn't it? Storm Ben, Benjamin. What have they called it this time?
Oh, was it another storm? I didn't even realise.
Yeah. Well, you know they come up with these. I was actually chatting with someone about it last night. They come up with these lovely names, don't they, for this miserable weather that comes across sometimes. But yeah, So a nice night for Chelsea ahead of the Sunderland game.
Yeah, I think with the Champions League. I mean, we'll touch on it in a bit. That victory against Ajax, but. Is it difficult to know where teams stand now with the new format?
I think we're still getting used to it, aren't we? Just generally, as a whether you're media, sort of football club fans, I understand it to a degree in terms of trying to get some sexier games in there. But it feels like as a group stage, it only really heats up, as we saw in the first season last year, with sort of 1 or 2 games to go. Because there's you basically have to be really, really bad. You basically have to be Ajax, from what I saw last night, not make it through to at least the playoffs. It's the way that it's set up. So I'm not sure I'm a fan of it yet, but like with all things, it takes time, doesn't it, for us all to adjust, especially as older people, Chris. You know?
Well, exactly.
We don't like change, do we?
Bring back the knockout European Cups, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, really old school. Yeah, let's go. Just imagine the owners vote, or the owners voting for that. Yeah,
never happened. But we'll circle back because it was impacted by a red card, which has been a thing for this season, which we'll come back onto. But as I said in the build-up, you cover Chelsea for The Athletic, and I was looking. You've been at The Athletic for seemingly just over 6 years now. But it started out as this almost experiment, but it seems to have gone from strength to strength. The Athletic.
Yeah, so it launched actually in America in 2016, and the guys behind the idea thought, right, let's sort of go around the country, sort of get beat writers from every sort of major sports team, and let's get them all together. So it's the most sort of full sort of sports journalist service for your sports team that you follow, and you can also sort of follow, like if you've got an NBA team and an NFL team and an H team, so you've got it all in one place. And then 3 years later, obviously was doing well, and then 3 years later they came over to England thinking, oh, that football lark, there seems to be a lot of interest in that, as in proper football, even though I am an NFL fan. But proper football, and yeah, and it's obviously nothing to do with me. It's obviously done pretty well, and it was brought out by the New York Times a few years ago, which is obviously very significant because the New York Times. The last I saw, and this was a few months ago, well, maybe a bit longer, but the last I saw, the New York Times is the most subscribed website, a journalist service in the world, and the Athletic's number 2. So yeah, pretty big. I think it was over 4 million subscribers. And of course, if you're a fan of American sports, you can now follow Sunderland as well, or whatever. So yeah, it's been quite a ride, and obviously there's been a few changes over the years. But one thing that has remained constant, Chris, is that Chelsea are bonkers. Another reason for the dark circles under my eyes. It has been a very as it has been because before the Athletic, I reported 14 years for London Evening Standard, covering them, and before that, I was an agency guy that also covered Chelsea quite a bit in that time. So yes, they've definitely had they've provided an assist to the healthy man that I am today.
Yeah, you've probably seen the evolution. That was a great sales pitch, by the way, for the Athletic.
Yeah, I almost sort of feel like after this is done, I'm going to pitch for a raise or something.
Yeah, you should ask for some commission for a few.
Yeah. This is what I'm like when I'm around. I'll just go around telling it right. So yeah.
Well, like you say, you covered Chelsea for a long time, but it hasn't half been an evolution of a football club, because I mean, I go back to the time when, we were in the second division with Chelsea. You go back the late 80s where they were kind of bobbing up and down. But it was incredible, really, because they went through that, got promoted, but then it was only a few years later, really, where Chelsea was starting to become the place where superstars went to. And I mean, it was only a couple of years between buying Paul Furlong and Mark Stein, and then
Wow,
suddenly
you've
Ruud
gone
Gullit
really
coming in. And
yeah,
then
yeah.
Ruud Gullit's coming into the club.
Yeah, I mean, look, you obviously covered the club long enough to sort of know the backstory, and like Glenn Hoddle's arrival in 1994 is I think often forgotten about, how that was the real turning point, because you get Glenn Hoddle, and then soon enough, sort of people like Ruud Gullit's rocking up on the door. Ruud Gullit sort of becomes the first black manager to win the FA Cup. Who does he bring? He brings people like Zola and Vialli. So Chelsea sort of had that sort of upward curve before Abramovich. I know it's often a joke labelled at Chelsea that they've only existed since 2003, but the momentum had already started before Abramovich rocked up. Obviously, Abramovich may have had quite a sizable contribution to the Chelsea from going like a sort of a decent cup side, top 6 kind of Premier League club, which they'd been in the latter part of the 90s, early 2000s, to suddenly becoming one of the best teams in England and in Europe, and winning Premier Leagues, and obviously going on to win Champions League as well. But it has been. I mean, Chelsea is a crazy ride. They're constantly in the news, whether it be for the way they're performing on the pitch, or some scandal or issue off the pitch. I mean, only just recently, 74 charges for things that allegedly happened during the Abramovich era. So even though Abramovich is gone, I'm still sort of having to report on stuff that happened during his time. And then, of course, the takeover 2022, it's been a dramatic shift in the way that it's almost like I've covered 2 different clubs in the space of 25 years.
Yeah. And well, if it's anything like Manchester City, I'm sure those charges might get seen to in 2032 or something like that.
No, I'm assured. I'm not the Sunderland fans care too much, but I'm assured that it's not going to drag on like the Manchester City case. It should happen at some point. But haven't we heard that before?
Yeah, miracles might happen. You never know. And I wouldn't be a Sunderland fan without mentioning that we beat Chelsea in quarter-final of the FA Cup in 1992. But we'll move swiftly on because I actually
Athletic definitely wasn't involved around there.
last FA Cup win at Roker Park. I'll just throw that out there. But yeah, going back to those early 2000s, the Abramovich coming in and bringing, they finished second and Ranieri got the sack, and Mourinho coming in. But even with a lot of money thrown at projects, there's no guarantee. But what followed, kind of 2 straight titles. They finished outside the top 3 twice in 14 years, multiple FA Cups, League Cups, Champions League. I mean, probably at that point, even if the money was coming in, even the most kind of optimistic Chelsea fan probably couldn't have imagined what was coming.
I'm sure they didn't. I mean, I do remember. I mean, the extraordinary thing about the Abramovich takeover was how quiet it was kept quiet. Like it just happened. It's very rare in this day and age where something of that magnitude, like a major football club being bought out and just happening overnight, and it was done in double quick time. And Chelsea went, if you remember the backstory as well, is that Chelsea went into the final league game of the 2002-03 season with the players essentially being told, right, they're playing Liverpool, it's the battle for the last Champions League spot, and essentially being told the result of this game will determine what kind of happens to Chelsea next. And players would there would have been players that would going into that game, no pressure, lads. There would have been players sort of thinking, cool, I might not be a Chelsea player, and I might be that kind of pressure. And of course, there's been a lot of talk that Chelsea could have even sort of bit the dust, as it were, or gone into deep financial trouble. Something that's been counter-argued by certain people, but I don't think you can underestimate that there was a massive issue. Of course, Chelsea beat Liverpool, and then we're talking not long after that, suddenly this mysterious Russian oligarch buys the club, and we're talking within days, Chelsea suddenly going from massive sort of financial issues. And don't forget, their only signing in the summer of 2002 was a free agent, Kike De Lucas. Yeah, it's kind of like a quiz question. But that showed how little money there was in the pot, even then. And they went from that to suddenly take your pick. It was like Fantasy Football League or Championship Manager. Suddenly you can just Chelsea back page every day. Chelsea want this guy, this guy, this guy. And I'll never forget, sort of example, the press conference where it was like 5 of the 6 of the signings. Never seen anything like it. Signings just all there, unveiled at the same time, and you're just going, "This is nuts." And we're talking some big players. Damien Duff was among them, and of course he was sort of seen as one of the most exciting teams in the Premier League at the time. So, yeah, so Chelsea. But even then, yes, you're right in that to go from even then sort of going, oh, Chelsea are being linked with all these players. So suddenly, if you'd got up to a fan then and gone, oh, this is what you're gonna win, they may have dreamed of it, but I don't think they would have believed it would actually happen, because Chelsea's always been a bit of a Neely team. What if maybe it could happen? So for it to actually happen, I think would have, Even now, I think if they actually think about it, they might be sort of going, have we actually witnessed all this? Even me, sort of from the press box, is sort of going, this has been some crazy ride.
Yeah. Because even the mid-90s, I remember us playing. It was live on Sky. Peter Reid, Sunderland, and there was just a car park behind the goal. I think
everyone loves the car park.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it is weird seeing those pictures of what Stamford Bridge used to look like. But funnily enough, the stadium now is obviously doesn't look as as aging as badly as that looks, but compared to sort of what we're seeing now in new ground, and Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is always talked about as the reference point, it's very much looking very dated. But a part of me sort of kind of likes these grounds that have not been redeveloped or moved to yet, because I think a lot of character in the grounds is going as a result of looking for bigger capacities.
Absolutely. I absolutely love going to Villa Park. That's still my favourite.
Exactly. Yeah. And St James's Park. And yeah, it's it's great.
Well, let's not get carried away, Simon. But...
Oh yeah. Remember your audience, Simon. Remember your
absolutely.
Audience. Yeah, that awful play. Always like going to the clubs, yeah.
But no soul there at all. But yeah, that deal with Abramovich. Are you surprised that actually, because you said it happened so quietly, kind of just came in, but you look at what ended up happening in football with the Manchester City deal that led to, other deals that have involved, let's say, nations or whatever, that actually there wasn't part of the Football Association, Premier League or whoever who thought, hang on, actually, this deal here has led to this, and this might be something we need to look at. But they allowed that to kind of happen over the course of 15 years or maybe even a bit longer when others got involved in football.
Yeah, I think Abramovich opened the floodgates, really. And that's why you sort of saw a few years later, sort of the early the early introduction of like FFP, PSR, whatever you want to call it these days, because obviously the old guard were going, hang on, we don't want these new boys gate crashing the party, and Man City just got in time before the door started to really be shut. And that's why I have great sympathy for other clubs that essentially aren't able to go through what Chelsea and Manchester City have gone through, to have someone come in and be able to just spend sort of freely. And of course, now that those clubs are restricted like everybody else, but they've built themselves into a position where they can cope. They can, they're such a big club now that it's not going to hurt to make a stride now from I don't want to mention the other team I've already mentioned, but say for example Sunderland, they can't do what Chelsea and Man City have been able to do. They can't be a wealthy benefactor who comes in and goes, right, I'm now going to go and target. I'm going to get Yamal from Barcelona and Doué from PSG and et cetera, et cetera. You just can't do it. And I mean, this is the argument. They say it's to help protect clubs in terms of from themselves. But I think we all know what it's really designed to protect.
Yeah, absolutely. But you've covered Chelsea for a long time now. So what's your memories of Sunderland travelling to Stamford Bridge?
Well, let me give you a good one from Sunderland's point of view and a bad one from Sunderland's point of view. So I remember starting with the bad one. Let's get the bad news over first. So Carlo Ancelotti, the double winning season, Sunderland got I think 7 put past them. But they weren't the only ones that season. So Sunderland weren't alone. And this was essentially the Mourinho squad, give or take a few other names, but with Ancelotti letting the handbrake off a lot more. And that's why, if you speak to Chelsea supporters, even though Ancelotti was only there for 2 years, he is still revered because of the football that was played under him. He encouraged his players to go out and have fun. And if memory serves me right, because the older we get, Chris, I'm sure you can understand. One has to double check these facts sometimes. So I think Ashley Cole scored a phenomenal goal, which kind of summed up the way that, and yeah, just check, it was 7-2. Ashley Cole scored I'm sure it was a phenomenal goal where John Terry plays ball, a measured pass. It wasn't a ball over top. It was a measured pass straight into his feet. He basically controls it with one step, cuts inside and bends it with the outside of his foot into the corner. but it has to be the phenomenal achievement, and it has to go down as a phenomenal achievement of becoming the first team to beat Mourinho's Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. So Mourinho in 2014. So don't forget, Mourinho had been unbeaten in the league from his first spell, which was 04-07, and this was the back end of his first season back at the club. And Chelsea were well in the title race as well. I mean, it's quite interesting. It always amuses me that, and I get it, everyone remembers 13-14 as Liverpool bottling the title, but I always argue actually it was Chelsea, or just as much Chelsea, because if you look at Chelsea's record, they beat City home and away. I think they beat Liverpool home and away, beat Arsenal home and away, something like that, or pretty much they had something like 16 out of 18 points or something like that. So against the top teams, they were clearly the best team, but they lost points against teams they're expected to beat, and Sunderland was obviously one of them. And it had its share of controversy, the penalty, and I actually interviewed Azpilicueta, who gave away the penalty, about a week later, and it was after the Gerrard slip game. So Chelsea won that, of course, against the odds. Mourinho actually played a much changed team because he thought the title was gone, mainly because of that Sunderland result. And Chelsea had a Champions League semi-final against Atletico Madrid 3 days later. So he was very much sort of, okay. But he didn't want to give up on the Liverpool game. Like he did the old defensive masterclass that he's always attributed to. But I spoke to Azpilicueta afterwards, who was obviously in good spirits. And let's just say that I couldn't run it because Chelsea's PR were like, we don't want to get Azpilicueta into trouble, or we don't want you to get Azpilicueta into trouble. But let's just say he didn't have many kind words to say about the officiating and felt that he was very hard done by with the challenge. Now, I get it. I think it was it Altidore that was running in, and Azpilicueta kind of slides in a sort of I'm going to block the cross kind of way. And from Azpilicueta's point of view, Altidore sort of deliberately trod on his leg and then fell over. I can understand why Sunderland fans may sort of remember it slightly differently. But hey ho, that's football, isn't it? But yeah, I think getting back to the point, that was a game that I'm sure Sunderland fans look back on very fondly, because beating Mourinho's Chelsea at Stamford Bridge is some, and of course it helped them stay up in the Premier League too.
Yeah, there's a famous defeat that we had at Stamford Bridge back in August 1999 when we got beat 4-0 on the opening day of the season with Gianfranco Zola and Gus Poyet absolutely taking us apart.
And if memory serves, Sunderland dished out a real dose of revenge in the return. Kevin Phillips was obviously absolutely on fire as a centre forward then, and I think didn't he ping one in from sort of 25 yards? I can picture it now, top corner, a tremendous strike, and Niall Quinn, right? Yeah, but they were great sort of double act, weren't they? Like perfect combination of big man, little man, and they just seemed to have that understanding that you can't put a, like, how does this happen? It's just like it was always meant to be.
Yeah, just looking at recent years, there's been a bit of a drought by Chelsea standards. No league titles for 8 years, 7 managers in 7 years, which might be par of the course. But has it been seen as an achievement that during that time, you know, Chelsea have still been pretty competitive, considering the upheaval of, you know, changing orders, transfer embargoes? But, you know, when you look at it, they've only finished outside the top 4 3 times in the last 8 seasons. So can you look at that as an achievement?
Let me think. I mean, it depends who you talk to. I mean, I think you have to be. I think you have to sort of say, look, Chelsea haven't challenged for a league title since they last won it, and so that suggests that there was a certain decline already setting in before the new owners arrived. A lot of Chelsea Abramovich loyalists will praise understandably, previous regimes are high heaven, but mistakes were undoubtedly made. I think that Chelsea should, I mean, it sounds ridiculous to sort of go, oh, they shouldn't be satisfied with what the trophy haul they got. But I think they could have been even more dominant, a la Manchester City. I think Man City have actually, I mean, Chelsea's record isn't bad, but Man City have dominated in a way that Chelsea, certainly in the Premier League, that Chelsea have never done. You know, you sort of say back to back. They won the title back to back once. City won it 4 times in a row. And I think that comes down to transfer policy. If you look at Chelsea's transfer windows when they won the title in 15 and 17, so the last 2 titles, the transfer window is very poor. You sort of go, that's when you know, from the position of strength. I mean, it just shows, well, no one should write Liverpool off just yet. There's no sort of, we all thought, crikey, Liverpool going from a position of strength, you know, unbelievable transfer spend in the summer. It doesn't always work instantly, of course, but yeah, there was some absolutely shocking buys. Bakayoko springs to mind. The search for a centre forward has been a real problem, and still is. The search for a goalkeeper. They haven't had. But Chelsea were very lucky. They went from Carlo Cudicini, early 2000s. He got demoted, like he had been number 1 in many of those teams at the time, for Petr Cech, one of arguably, some will say the best. I will always say arguably. It's very hard to, I think it's always my opinion, but certainly one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League has ever been. And then he gets demoted for Thibaut Courtois, who has established himself as one of the best keepers in the world. So Chelsea had this incredible run, and then you look at who they've had since, and the standard's been pretty low in comparison. And of course, at the moment they've got Rob Sanchez, certainly someone to target on Saturday. If you're Sunderland, I don't need to do Sunderland's tactical job for them. I'm sure that'll be seen as an area of weakness. So yeah, that is, so Chelsea have morphed into more of a cup side. I think the Champions League win in 21, magnificent as it was, kind of, I hesitate to say papered over the cracks a little bit, but it was a magnificent achievement. But I think cup football is different to league football. You can string, even in the Champions League, as Chelsea showed in the Club World Cup. You can string, you can get on that momentum, you can sort of get yourself together for like 6-7 games to win a cup competition. But the old cliche of bread and butter Premier League, it's so true. It is the hardest thing to win, and I think it's a real insight of how good you really are. Can you do it every single week? And Chelsea can't. They're very inconsistent. Like, even this season, we've seen again. And in terms of the new owners since 22, look, it's been an extraordinary time. They basically completely removed everybody, almost, not just playing wise, but also behind the scenes, from the previous era. It's a totally different club and personnel. You go around, if you see a familiar face from the old era, it's like, oh wow, you're still here. Well done, because there aren't many left. And look, Chelsea have gone to a deliberate new path. And of course, everyone focuses on the spending. They've spent unbelievable, spent more than Abramovich, which, you know, like, even with inflation, you sort of think it's been crazy, but it's a totally different model. It's buying young, it's putting them on cheaper wages, it's putting them on long contracts. It means that if a player doesn't work out, they're much easier to sell. So, look, in the Abramovich era, there'd be players who are older on massive salaries that they struggle to get rid of, and like Fernando Torres being a classic example, Shevchenko. You know, you suddenly sort of think, crikey, I signed Torres and Shevchenko, amazing, but they didn't work out, and suddenly you're lumbered with someone that no one really wants, or they're looking for a deal, and you're losing money. So there is, from the outside, a lot of criticism, and understandably so, but there is method behind the madness. And of course, we've seen Chelsea sell over £300 million worth of talent in the summer. Like no other club can do that, and it's because of Chelsea's model. And look, it's taken time. I think the Chelsea fans are still struggling to adapt to this Abramovich, the win now mantra compared with this. It's all about the future. We're building for the future of the current ownership. But they've gone from 12th in 22-23, which was an absolute shocker of a season, to 6th under Pochettino, 4th under Maresca last season, and the Club World Cup and the Conference League, and now they're back in the Champions League for the first time under the ownership. So they sort of think that there's signs that it's all coming together.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
Just on that, where are Chelsea in the building process? Because, looking at the team that started against Nottingham Forest, it was the Premier League's youngest starting 11 on that weekend. And of course, they broke records in the Champions League for teenagers scoring lots of goals. I mean, are they still building down the line, or do they want immediate success with this young side?
I think they're realistic in that they don't expect to win the title this season. What they expect is to challenge for longer and to finish closer than they did last season. Certainly finish in the Champions League positions again, and to go deep, if not win one of the other three cup competitions. Now, Champions League obviously being the hardest of those three, so they're certainly not sitting there going, yeah, going to win the Champions League. But beating PSG in the Club World Cup final, the Club World Cup is obviously divided opinion. I think there's obviously a lot of people that sort of deride it. It's like a pre-season tournament. I understand, but having watched it, I was really surprised. I thought it'd just be like a gentle kickabout as well, but it was really intense. I think that once the teams got there, they really wanted to win it, and I think it also helped that the non-European clubs brought that "we want to win this" mantra to the tournament. And people look at Chelsea's run to the final and go, it was a bit easy. Well, it wasn't their fault that Al Hilal beat Manchester City. And Al Hilal were fantastic. I think Inter Milan were also on their side of the draw and got knocked out. But for me, the most notable thing about Chelsea winning the Club World Cup was beating PSG in the final and the manner in which they did it. And it was quite amusing after the fact. I could sort of see people deriding it. Oh, PSG were a bit tired, or whatever. And I was going, oh, come on, let's be fair. No one was saying PSG looked tired when they were batting Bayern Munich. It just felt a bit like, yeah, people were very sort of reluctant, I think, to give Chelsea credit for anything. I get it, but I think in this case, they deserve credit. And Cole Palmer, it was, I don't know whether you saw any of it, Chris, but people sometimes, because he had a tricky second half of last season, and as always on social media, you see people delighting and sort of thinking he's just a busted flush already. And then you watch him destroy PSG and you just go, right. It's another reminder that we are privileged as football fans. I think sometimes we have to park our allegiances at the door when you see just a top talent and someone that you enjoy watching as a football fan, not just a sport of a particular club. And he can do things that do make you just go into a game worthy of your time, even if it's against your side. I mean, I put it this way. Obviously, I'm just a Chelsea reporter, but I was in the Bernabeu a few years ago when under Thomas Tuchel. So this was the back end of, so Chelsea was sanctioned. They're playing Real Madrid, and they lost the first leg 3-1 at Stamford Bridge, and no one gave them a chance to go at the Bernabeu and win that game. They were 3-0 up. It's one of the most extraordinary. I'm only raising this because I resubscribed to a certain channel only the other day, and I recorded the game to watch back later, and I never did. And I watched it for the first time since because I just want to sort of remind myself of that game. And my memory of Luka Modric's assist for Rodrigo, which made it 3-1 to Chelsea, but took the game into extra time, will go down as one of the greatest assists I've ever seen. It was. You just sort of sat there and just went, "That's what watching football's all about." It was an outside of the foot pass from about 30 yards, 35 yards, that drifted perfectly over Thiago Silva's head into Rodrigo's path for him to volley it. It was just, you sort of think, cool, if I tried that, not only would it happen, I'd probably pull a hamstring or something.
I think in terms of Enzo Maresca, I think Jamie Carragher's brought this up a few times in terms of how much Chelsea have spent. But how's he being judged? Because he's got this young squad, but he's spent a lot of money, or the club spent a lot of money. So how do the fans judge the manager when it's like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to sort of park the two in terms of the fans and the club. So the fans, I think I sort of intimated earlier that I still feel like it's a bit, if I use, can you remember Peter Snow and his swingometer on election night? So it's a bit like, I suppose it's the same at every club, isn't it? You know, fans can sort of drift with the breeze a little bit, but he's found it hard to win them over. But I think in many ways, he carries the baggage of the general suspicion of the new ownership. So, and his style of football is quite, at times, it can be a little bit, passing for passing's sake, and it's been hard to warm to. But at the same time, there was a strong end to last season, as I've already touched on, which helped. Interestingly, it only took a couple of defeats, Man United and Brighton, where Chelsea were down to 10 men on both occasions, for the swingometer to come in and all that to be deleted. But then it also then took a late win, and Chelsea's best performance of the season against Liverpool, and of course Esteval, dramatic win at the back post in injury time, and then Maresca running down the touchline, a la Mourinho, although he did that for Porto, not for Chelsea. But that sort of passion, that celebrate, that probably, and I even wrote a piece after it going, that did more positive PR for him than the most expensive PR advice money can buy. Because it would be the same as, like what fans want to see. I'm sure Sunderland fans feel that. Is that the manager cares as much as they do, or the players care about what's going on as much as they do. And that wasn't contrived. That wasn't sort of Maresca going, oh, this will look good for the cameras. That was a guy just going, just beating Liverpool in the last minute, I'm going to run over my players and jump in with, and almost jumped in with the fans. It was quite funny. And he got sent off for it as well, which also I think sort of might have endeared him to his players as well, because I sort of went, oh yeah, you're just as bad as us. But yeah, so I still think it's like, it would say if Sunderland win on Saturday, which I don't think is beyond the realms of possibility, in the sense that Chelsea is still a very inconsistent side. They were very flattered by the 3-0 win over Nottingham Forest last weekend. Like, if I felt quite sorry for Postecoglou because if his players could hit a barn door, like Chelsea could have easily been 2 or 3 goals down in the first half an hour, and then there would have been no way back. So if Sunderland take their chances, then suddenly the atmosphere in Stamford Bridge turns again. So in terms of the club, though, they are looking at it as a review at the end of the season. So when there was a lot of noise, which I thought was a bit rather premature from some of my colleagues, after the Brighton defeat, Chelsea weren't sort of going, all right, we're now going to push the button. It was, the plan has always been to give him 2 years and to sort of look at the situation and where they're at. But I think within the club, I think he's respected for the job he's done so far.
Yeah, just looking at that Nottingham Forest game, obviously all the headlines went to Postecoglou getting sacked, but looking at the beginning of that game, there was a lot of chances that Chelsea gave to Nottingham Forest by playing out of the back. But, looking at Chelsea, will they rigidly stick to playing like that, even if they get caught out once or twice?
Yeah, I mean, that's the style of play. What I would say is Maresca has noticeably tweaked the game plan a little bit in the last 6 months. So it used to be where no matter what, the goalkeepers would just pass it essentially 5 yards to a centre-back every single time. And that led to some, as we've seen in other Premier League, it's just some of the worst goals you've ever seen. And it's just sort of going, really, is this tactical genius or just absolute stupidity? What was noticeable and what was needed, I'm amazed it took that long, was a bit of variety. Because funny enough, if you mix it up a bit, then the opponents don't know what you're going to do a little bit. They're going to be a little bit more circumspect. And certainly against PSG, it really came to the fore. Like he tactically outwitted Luis Enrique. And Sanchez is funny. As much as I've written him off, he does have these. He's one of those classic keepers that can be the best and the worst, almost in the space of a minute. He's just that air in it. But he was particularly good that day and was hitting, again, not long balls, deliberately aimed passes to the flanks, and PSG couldn't handle it. So he has adapted a little bit, and that'll be something that I'm sure Sunderland looked into. It worked very well against Liverpool as well, by the way, and particularly sort of Salah's sort of defending. I would imagine Sunderland aren't going to be quite as sort of on the front foot as Liverpool or under pressure to be. So that's the issue, is Chelsea sort of breaking down what I would imagine will be a more defensive side. And of course, they don't have Cole Palmer. He won't be back for a good sort of 4 or 5 weeks. But Chelsea have won 4 games in a row without him, which is some morale boost, even though some of the performances haven't been amazing. But the fact they've done it without him, I think, is a huge psychological sort of step for them.
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on the red cards once or twice, but are the amount of red cards, are they just purely a coincidence with things happening in the game, or is it part of a bigger problem that's going on at Chelsea at the moment?
It's a problem they've had since the ownership took over. I wrote about it during the international break, sort of making it very clear that this isn't a new phenomenon. Chelsea, it depends how you look at it. There's the fair, I suppose you call it the unfair play table, should we? So Chelsea finished 6th in the unfair play table in 22-23. In 23-24, they won the title with the most yellow cards, a record number of Premier League yellow cards in the Premier League. In 24-25, they finished 2nd, just 5 points behind, was it Bournemouth or Brighton, someone like that. So they finished, they came close to retaining the title. And now currently they sit top. They're 7 points clear of Brighton. Yeah, I knew there was a Brighton involved. So Maresca downplaying it, I'm not buying it. I understand he doesn't want to go against his players in public. And maybe the aforementioned red card against Liverpool also weakens his hand a little bit, Because if you go in there and go, right, sort your attitude out, you go, yeah, but boss, you got yourself sent off as well. You know, you're in a difficult place then. In fact, he was only asked about it ahead of the Ajax game. And he said, he goes, I treat my players like my 4 kids. I don't punish them. I try and educate them. Well, he needs to work on the education. I mean, Malo Gusto, I don't know whether you saw it last Saturday. So Chelsea are 3-0 up. There's about 3 minutes to go. There's hardly any Forest fans around. The game's done. He's on a yellow card and he dives in and gets sent off with a second yellow. Like, there's sheer stupidity. I actually looked into the breakdown of who got booked for what during the sort of the last 3 years. And Enzo Fernandez, who's regularly a captain in Reece James's absence, he's had 19 yellow cards, I think, off the top of my head, and 11 of them are for dissent and arguments. Very avoidable yellow cards, right? I mean, there's a fine line, isn't there? You don't want your team to be too soft. You don't want them to sort of pull out 50-50s and not want to sort of butt heads with a player or perhaps chip away a little bit at the ref. But when you've got a record this consistently bad for 3 years, then it's more than just a one-off occasion. It's a consistent show of ill discipline. And in fact, Tosin could have been sent off against Ajax. I actually missed it. He'd already had a booking, and he sort of landed. I just looked up and saw him land awkwardly with Weghorst. And then you saw the replay, and it looks like he basically deliberately aims his foot at Weghorst's head as he lands, like a very sneaky one. But if you actually look at it, you go, that's it, at least a yellow. So it could have been another one. That would have made it, including Maresca, 6 reds in 7 games. So that's not just by luck. Yes, you can look at Rob Sanchez at Man United. The ball, you're in a race to get to a ball first. You slightly mistime it, and you're the last man. You're off. Same with Chalobah against Brighton. Bad back pass by Andre Santos, and you're running back, and you sort of make that, oh no, sort of lost its challenge, and you get it wrong. So there are circumstances, yes, of course, but there's far too many cards to sort of just go, oh yeah, it's just a bit of bad luck.
I think this is a question that I'm asking most clubs in the previews before we play them away from home. But being Sunderland and getting promoted through the playoffs, and especially for sides like Chelsea, and we maybe talked about this, especially for Man U, is there a pressure on Chelsea to be on the front foot and ultimately to win? Because, there's a possibility that, if it's 0-0 after 20 minutes, half an hour, that there might be a bit of frustration in the home crowd.
Yeah. I mean, it's going back to the old. This might not be the old Chelsea, but that sort of Chelsea win, sort of, we've got to win this. Will still be there, and they'll be like, yeah, people will be expecting, even though Sunderland have got off to a great start this season, there'll be sort of some obviously more educated, patient people in the crowd that go, this isn't a gimme, because Sunderland arrive in great form, great confidence. Maresca noticeably mentioned Sunderland quite a few times in his post-match duties after the Ajax game. And you look at the team he picked, the 10 changes, you look at the subs he made at half-time. Casado went off shortly after. It did amuse me, by the way, that Chelsea were 4-1 up against 10 men, but it was only at 5-1, which happened in the 49th minute, I think, that Maresca then went, no, don't need Casado anymore. So, what on earth were you worried about? 4-1 at home against 10 men, and Ajax were terrible, and you're going, no, I still need Casado. Now you can have a rest. But yeah, he was obviously thinking Sunderland, which is a huge sign of respect, and rightly so, because and I'm not just saying this because I'm on the podcast. I've said it because I'm on TalkSport, not as much as I used to be, but I'm on TalkSport every weekend with a little stint, and in the middle of the night for you late people for maximum listenership. But I've said it's great that Sunderland are back in the Premier League, but is great for the Premier League that all the promoted clubs, and Sunderland among them, have got off such a good start, because it's been so depressing, really. The last couple of years, it's been pretty pathetic that the teams come up from the Championship and they're just going down without a fight. But this is more than just sort of gritty sort of tactics. I also sort of thought Sunderland had a great chance because of the atmosphere, obviously at home. The home form's massive, and if there's a place, I've been to Sunderland quite a few times over the years, and you know when you go there that it's going to be you love going to games where there's a buzz and there's a proper roar in the crowd. And yeah, I always thought that Sunderland had a good chance because of that. But obviously, the job that's been done there is fantastic, and they're riding the momentum of course, getting promoted last season, which is great.
Yeah, well, our record is absolutely awful at Stamford Bridge. We lose about 4 in every 6 games we play there. So based on that, there's probably only one outcome. But have you got any feeling about the game? Does kind of you could tell you kind of how it's going to go?
Yeah, what my I mean, I've been. You only have to talk to people in the Chelsea beat that I'm consistently cautious, because I'm always asked my opinion. Don't know why. I don't know what I'm talking about. But no, because I don't trust this Chelsea yet. I don't. I'm a bit like the people in the crowd. You don't. Chelsea have rarely had a consistency like they would have in the Abramovich era, where you kind of felt they would win every single week. They're a lot more unpredictable now. Of course, Chelsea are favourites, they have to be. And if Chelsea win, I'll sort of do it this way. If Chelsea win, I think it'll be very narrow win. I think it'll be sort of like a 2-1 kind of thing. I can't see it being like going back to the Ancelotti 7-2 kind of job. Because as well, it's the classic midweek. I know I've just talked about changes and it was quite an easy game for Chelsea against Ajax, but still, they've still had the added distraction of a midweek game. And Sunderland actually have had all week to prepare, and you do see the difference. So, for example, the Manchester United performance at Old Trafford, I mean, Chelsea were terrible. I kind of expected it, but you could really see a difference in the energy levels, like United having all week to prepare for it. So I think Sunderland will give a real good account of themselves, and I expect to hear quite a lot of noise from the away end.
I was going to say, you're going to be there. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'll be there. The one thing I would warn everyone about, I'm sure, well, I'd like to think that Sunderland, as in the football club, have been warning their fans, but there are classic sort of transport issues. So it depends where I sort of haven't studied the map completely, but put it this way: Fulham Broadway, where you can always get out, that's shut, which is, thanks very much. In fact, the whole district line in that area is shut, from what I understand. So I'm happy to drive all the way pretty close to the ground, which is something I don't normally do.
Well, as we've kept you longer than we intended, that's probably a good place to leave it, Simon. So just leaves me to say it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it as always, mate.
No worries.
And thanks again, everyone, for listening. Don't forget, we'll have immediate reaction after the final whistle with a pod that should drop very soon after that. And we'll also have all the reaction on the Roker Report website, so look out for all of that. But from us, bye for now.
Podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like Fight Disciples, with me, Adam Catterall, and my good mate, Nick Peat, your ultimate podcast for everything boxing and MMA. Join us all this week from Abu Dhabi as we bring you closer to the action when Tom Aspinall defends his UFC heavyweight title against Cyril Gane. Whether you're a hardcore fan or just starting out, we've got something for you. Search Fight Disciples and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.